Welcome to Future Talk. One of the most difficult problems facing the world today is how to find enough energy to power our ever-expanding industrial economy. Billions of dollars are being spent to develop energy sources that are affordable, sustainable, and environmentally clean. One of the leaders in energy research is SRI International, formerly known as the Stanford Research Institute, and one of the top independent research organizations in the world. I have two guests from SRI who are involved in energy work, Barbara Heydorn and Ripudaman Malhotra. Barbara Heydorn is director of the Center of Excellence in Energy at SRI, where she develops the strategy that links SRI's research and development capabilities to the needs of the marketplace. She helps put together multidisciplinary teams with people both inside and outside of SRI to tackle complex energy issues. Ripudaman Malhotra is a research fellow at SRI, which is one of the highest designations given there, and he's also associate director of SRI's Chemical Science and Technology Laboratory. He studies ways to make more efficient use of conventional fuels, such as oil, coal, and natural gas, and he's the co-author of the recent book, A Cubic Mile of Oil. Barbara, let me start with you. Exactly what does your job consist of at SRI?
Well, I'm part of the business development team. It's a corporate function, and it's designed to make sure that we're getting the most out of our researchers by hooking them up with interdisciplinary teams. And also, it's an outreach position to bring back information on market needs and to make sure that our researchers are aware of how their inventions can be used.
Are there any particular types of energy that are considered particularly promising in the marketplace?
Oh gosh, there's so many ways to cut that question, and absolutely energy is important from all sectors. We really need innovation everywhere in this business. I know a lot of the emphasis today has been on renewables, and those are very important, and I look forward to a time when they're widely available, cost-effective, and people can use them and count on them when they need them.
Now, does renewable energy mean that no matter how much you use, there's always some left?
Right, so resources like the sun and in the wind, which indirectly is a form of solar power, aren't here in a fixed quantity that will run out, the same way some theories are around hydrocarbons and natural gas. But those hydrocarbon resources are the ones that our infrastructure has been built around. They do offer some advantages, particularly in the formation of liquid fuels, and we need to use those more responsibly so they're around for as long as we need them.
Now, I understand that there's a lot of power in things like ocean waves. Mm-hmm. In fact, we have a short video which demonstrates a device that might extract electricity from ocean waves. We're going to go ahead and show that video, and then we'll discuss it. So let's go ahead and roll that tape.
We're being challenged to provide enough energy. Gasoline prices are going very high, and coal burns very dirty, and so there's a real challenge to make clean and low-cost energy. And at SRI, we're addressing that in many ways. One of the ways is through the use of a new technology that we call artificial muscle. Artificial muscle is based on a rubbery polymer, which I'm holding here in my hand, and when you stretch and contract it, by putting on electricity at the right times, you can actually use it to generate electricity. This is a device that when you compress it, it stretches and contracts.
Artificial muscle is a technology it's a rubber-like technology that converts energy from mechanical to electrical, or the other way around. As the buoy raises up and down and absorbs the energy from the waves, it's translated into movement of that artificial muscle. And with every stroke that it goes up and down, it's generating electricity. What's unique about the artificial muscle compared to wave power is a lot like wind power. It's using the polymer to actually do that. And that polymer is about 100 times more energy dense than a traditional coil and magnet system. And that's why we think it's going to be revolutionary in being able to tap into that energy source and get 100 times more energy out than a traditional system.
They'll be simple and low cost enough so that you could make a large number of them. A lot of possibilities based on its simplicity and efficiency.
You could capture.
That looks like a pretty interesting way of getting electricity from ocean waves. And I guess my question is, what has to happen, what further development has to take place before that's commercially viable, before you get enough energy to be worth the cost.
Well, actually, this is an example where we found an application that seemed uniquely suited to this type of energy, powering a lighting device on a buoy. So you can imagine out in a remote area, it's not easy to change a battery, and if you've got seabirds resting on your solar panel, it's not going to perform as effectively as you'd like. Working on an application like this is a way to demonstrate the technology at a smaller scale in an application that is suited to that particular technology. And that's part of the magic of getting things to market, is finding the right market need.
So this would be sort of a local thing. Maybe it could help power a lighthouse. It might not necessarily go into the main electrical grid, it sounds like.
Well, I think it's too early to know the full potential of the technology. As you work with things, you discover the advantages and challenges that you may not have been aware of until you actually start testing the limits. But we think that this does have potential applications to get bigger than that. But there are some challenges of linking power to shore and things like that we haven't figured out all of that yet.
Now, is SRI a full capability research lab to the point that it would invent that polymer and invent new materials that have never been seen before with unusual properties?
Absolutely, and we play in so many different sectors of the energy sector. And what's kind of fun about that video that you might not realize is that that wasn't the original application for that polymer. The work was done for the government looking at a way to bring more lifelike movement to robots, and that was being done with artificial muscle, the material described. But the idea was if you apply a voltage, the muscle can expand and contract. But if you expand it, then you can generate electricity, and that's how you can do the energy harvesting.
Well, that raises an interesting question about SRI's culture and the scientific method, the way that people come up with new ideas. Can either of you tell me anything about how people discover uses in things that nobody else thought had any use?
Well, some of it's serendipity, about making the right connections, and also about market needs evolving at the same pace as your technology. So earlier, Ripu and I were talking about our solar-grade silicon technology, which came about initially at a time when the thinking was that there was always going to be plenty of electronic-grade silicon to serve all the demand for solar applications. Well, when that flipped around, suddenly this technology, which had been sitting on the shelf for 25 years, became very desirable to clients to license.
Now, are you basically market-driven, where you wait until there's a need and then look for a way to fill it? Or do you just invent stuff and wait until the market catches up with you?
We're a contract research organization, so at some level we are always responding to a client need. We also think about, are there ways to use that in applications beyond the original need that we're addressing?
Okay. Ripu, let me ask you something. You have said that in order to solve the energy problem, the first thing you have to do is frame the problem correctly. How would you frame the energy problem that we're trying to solve here?
So what I've been trying to tell people, and I have this discussion, is that we need to look at the benefits and costs of the energy from all sides, and that there are challenges that we all know. We all know that it's a very big problem, arguably the largest problem that we are facing. And supplying energy so that people can live healthy, productive lives is a big challenge. It's going to take a lot of energy. And we have to begin by appreciating how much of it that we are using. Too often the debate has been, oh, you have to balance the needs of people or of the environment. You have to protect the environment by cutting down the CO2. That's fine. That is one important, very compelling need. But if it is not balanced by the other moral imperative, which is to allow people to live healthy, productive lives, then I think we are missing the tougher challenge.
So it's
it's the tension that is there, is the tension between the need to provide adequate energy for people to develop.
Now, you were the co-author of a book called A Cubic Mile of Oil. In fact, you have a copy of the book right there.
Yeah.
Maybe you can hold it up to that camera over there so we can take a look at it.
Sure.
Okay, there it is.
Yes.
So what is that concept about? What does that mean, a cubic mile of oil?
So we have all heard that the world uses somewhere about 80 million barrels of oil a day. I'm not sure many of us appreciate how much that amount is. But 80 million barrels over 1 year is equal to 1 cubic mile. That much of energy is what we use in oil itself. When we talk about energy we get from oil, we get from coal, we get from wind, we get from photovoltaics, we get from hydro, we get from nuclear power, gas, all these different sources. And for each source, it's typically described in a different unit. Oil is always described in gallons, barrels, or something like that. Coal in tons, natural gas in trillions cubic feet, and so on and so forth. Electricity is always in kilowatt hours or multiples thereof.
So you're trying to have a common unit of measure so you can compare how much oil you use to how much coal you use?
Right. That, and also a number a unit that is that scales to the global use, because you could use joules. That's a perfectly good unit, scientific.
And joules are not those things you wear around your neck. Those energy units that you learn about in physics.
Right. So the world uses in a year about 570 exajoules of energy, something like that, a number like that. But it doesn't resonate with people. It doesn't. But if I tell you that we get 1 cubic mile of oil from oil, and on top of that, the billions of tons of coal that we burn give us 8/10 of a cubic mile oil of energy and 6/10 of cubic mile of energy from natural gas, 2/10 each from hydro, nuclear, and wind.
It gives a more clear picture.
And wood burning, sorry, not wind, wood burning, for a total of 3 cubic miles of oil. It gives us a picture.
We actually have some slides which are going to illustrate what you're talking about. Can we see that first slide, please? Okay, so that is a picture of a cubic mile of oil.
Yeah, and I tried to use a monument nearby that may be recognizable. And
that's the Statue of Liberty in the corner to show the size.
But it was very difficult. No, it's the red circle that you see around it is to remind me to tell you, you're looking at the Statue of Liberty through a big magnifying glass. It's about blown up 10 times to put it on scale on this picture.
So at this scale with the Statue of Liberty, the cubic mile is too small.
The Statue of Liberty is too small. So yeah, that's right.
Okay, let's take a look at the next slide.
I had to blow up the Statue of Liberty.
Okay, now this is a little far away to read it, but so this tells what we're using energy for.
Right.
Okay.
So I told you already that we are using about 3 cubic miles of energy. Most of that, about 37% of that, goes immediately into producing electricity. That's a very useful form, because it's a very useful form of energy. It's a good carrier. It's not a primary source of energy. Primary energy is what I gave you earlier. And then it is the remaining sources, the remaining sectors that we use are, like for transportation, about 29%, residential commercials, which is the built environment, if you will, and industrial. Those are the other.
So the chart on the left shows different uses of energy, including electricity as a separate category.
Right.
And then the chart on the right, the electricity is merged into the other categories.
To the extent they are used in the others.
But transportation hardly increased at all.
That's right. We don't use electricity for transportation at the moment. We have very little amount of that. Some railway, electric rails are there, but it's minuscule.
A few electric cars, but very few.
They won't register on this scale.
We have one more slide. Let's go ahead and look at the third slide. Okay, so this is where we get energy from.
Yeah, this is what's showing all the different primary sources of energy. So oil giving us 1, coal giving us 8/10 of a CMO or cubic mile of oil, 6/10 from natural gas, and 2/10 each of nuclear, hydro, and wood burning. And then those thin slivers that you see are the geothermal, the wind, the photovoltaics, the biofuels, and all that.
Right. So some of these alternate fuels that we're always reading about in the newspapers that are always being touted as the next big wave, like solar and wind and wave power, that's really minuscule use right now.
At the moment, yes. And that's the one we need to grow that big.
And what has to what would it take to make because those are desirable because you don't have to mine wind currents.
Right.
They're already there.
Right. Yeah. These are what we call our income sources. the coal, oil, and nuclear and gas, these are our inheritance. So far we have been living off our inheritance and transitioning to income, which is being given by the sun each year. A lot of it is something to get there. But it's a long way, and it takes a long time. The sun, by the way, on the CMO scale, endows us with 23,000 CMO every year.
That's cubic miles of oil.
Yes, we are looking for 3, 4, 5, something like that. That's what we are using now. 3 is what we are using, and we'll probably grow to 6 or 9 by the middle of the century.
So the amount of solar power that falls on the Earth every year is far in excess.
Far in
if we could just capture it.
If we could capture it. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of land. No, we don't. 10,000 square mile or 50,000 square miles would be the kind of things that you would need to dedicate for that. Plus, where are you going to do it? Where are you going to find that? There are places, but if they are too far from the people that need it, you need some other infrastructure to build. Sun doesn't shine all the time, wind doesn't blow all the time, so we need other things like storage that need to be developed at scale. We can store electricity in little batteries, but the cost is very high, compared to...
Well, that's one of the limiting factors
the cost
of electricity, isn't it? The fact that electricity is hard to store.
Yeah.
You kind of have to use it as soon as it's created. You can store it in batteries, but it's very inefficient. Like the battery used in an all-electric car weighs about 900 pounds.
I guess they are improving. They could be a little less now, but still, it's a fair... You're absolutely right. And they don't last forever.
Now, with solar power, is there a measure of efficiency of solar panels so that at least you're making full use of the solar power that's landing on that panel? You're not wasting anything that's hitting you.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it is an important aspect of it. Typical photovoltaics materials, right now that we get are 15 to 20% efficient. That means 15 to 20% of the sunlight that was incident on that is converted into usable electrical energy. What that translates into, and something important to appreciate, is the more efficient it is, the less area you would need. Right now, in the way the structure, it's not that the photovoltaic material itself is the most expensive part. The most expensive part is the balance of system. You have all the support structures and all that really add to the cost in installing it. If you can make it smaller, your installation costs go down. And that's where the bigger inefficiencies are at the moment. So improving the efficiency of the photovoltaic material, the photoactive material, has a big impact on the total cost in that reason. So research that's being done to improve that from 20 to 40% or 45%.
Now I understand that there's also some work being done on coal, because coal is very plentiful, but it also burns very dirty.
Yeah.
And I think SRI is involved in this.
Yeah.
Something you do to process coal before you burn it, so when you do burn it, it burns a lot cleaner. Can you say anything about that in simple, non-technical terms?
So yes, that was called an upgrading of coal. This was a technology that SRI developed many years ago, also about 30 years, maybe 25, 30 years ago. It's a K-fuel process for a particular client. This was taking a low-grade coal and upgrading it into a higher grade, removing the moisture, removing some of the other impurities.
So how do you do that? By somehow compressing it or adding chemicals to it?
A hot water treatment, basically.
Mm-hmm.
There are also actions that you can take around making it more environmentally benign, for example, by capturing that carbon dioxide that's an emission of concern. And we're doing a lot of work on campus right now, both to help our co-developers bring their technologies to market, or even companies that are simply looking for a place to help them scale up an idea that they have where we're not actually inventing the new technology ourselves, but applying our expertise in building systems and piloting technologies to help them bring it to market.
The big use of coal, if I may add, is for power generation, electricity generation. Mm-hmm. And the levelized cost of electricity, it's the cost for producing power from coal, under the current market environment is the lowest. It's around 2.5 to 3 cents a kilowatt hour. You get about 5 cents or so per kilowatt hour from nuclear. Wind can give you about 6 or 7 Solar photovoltaics give you cost about 35 cents.
Speaking of nuclear, does nuclear energy have a future? A lot of people think that nuclear energy has no future. No new nuclear power plants has been built in this country in decades.
Yes, true. All that is true. But I think that this is one of the bridge technologies that we need. And there are lots of good ways of using nuclear power also. And it is one of those non-CO2 emitting technologies that is at scale. There is a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding around nuclear, and that's one chapter that we devoted a lot in this book to talk about what are the different kinds of fears or misinformation about it, or what are the real technical challenges and what are the political challenges.
Well, the recent earthquake in Japan, which destroyed the cooling system of the nuclear reactor. I mean, you have nuclear fuel, which can't really be neutralized. You just have to lock it up somewhere. And,
right.
And nuclear waste, I mean, you don't want to just bury them in barrels and hope that nobody disturbs them for the next 25,000 years.
Correct. But there are ways to neutralize it also, by the way. There are some breeder technologies that could be developed. We haven't developed a whole lot of them, but there are being under development. Let's look at also the actual casualties or so that nuclear energy has resulted in. And then you see that its record isn't so bad. In Fukushima, let's not forget that more than 50,000 people, I think, died in the immediate result of the tsunami. How many have died because of the nuclear accident?
Well, not very many, but
0.
But it wasn't the worst case.
It wasn't the worst case. I agree. Look at what ifs we can certainly build, and we have to look at. And this was an accident that was far, far outside the design range.
Do you think that the urgency of developing new energy sources can get so great that sometimes we'll make errors of judgment?
Yeah.
For example, there's a method of energy extraction called fracking, in which you get oil and gas from under the earth, and what you do is you break rock layers to create more pathways for the oil and gas to be released, but you're sort of breaking the earth to do it. Is there a risk in that might not be worth the benefit?
So that technology again has been in practice for a long time, and in most cases it has been working well. Now, in the Marcellus region, where this has been most recently seen, we have seen some problems, and there are things that we need to work on it, and we have to be vigilant about it, and we have to mend it, don't end it, is what I would like to say in that, to paraphrase some other.
But I think this gets at the point that part of why Ripu wrote his book is so that people can have an informed and intelligent debate on all of these subjects. We do need energy. We absolutely need energy, and there's a cost associated with inaction also. And I think Ripu alluded to that in terms of quality of life and options that we're used to, being able to work when we want, where we want, and having even things like clean water and good health are all ultimately tied to energy.
I mean, poverty, is one of the biggest scourges on earth. Between 1985 and 2005, China lifted 430 million people out of the poverty line. But poverty was defined by existence at less than $2.50 a day by the World Bank.
It also means you don't have a car and a refrigerator and a washing machine.
We are talking much worse than that situation, right? But lifting them, that has also required at the same time development of a lot of energy, tripling or quadrupling its energy use and all that. But that improved the quality of life of millions and millions of people. This is more than the number of people in the United States and Canada and Mexico combined, I think.
Does it look like the demand will just keep going up and up no matter what? Because the two most populous countries in the world are China and India, and they see how people live in the Western world, and they want all those energy-gobbling appliances.
Yeah.
Do we have to assume that we just have to fill that need, or at some point are we going to say, well, maybe you're not going to get everything you want?
We may have to reconsider some of those things, and we have to find ways to use or conserve in a way that allows good things to happen also, but not be profligate in the use. And so through efficiencies and some attitudinal changes are needed. Like if we could have, why is it that that people don't like to live in high density dwellings? High density dwelling is a very efficient way of saving energy and kind of, but it doesn't, there are certain features about it that people dislike. Can we design places where it would be desirable, people would be attracted to live in and work in those areas? That would make a big difference.
I also think that there's a process of orderly transition that maybe we haven't fully explored. If you can have policies that indicate the path that you want to be moving forward on, that energy will become more expensive, for example, then people will start, I think, naturally to be looking for improvements in efficiency that just didn't make sense unless you thought there was a reason to change your behavior.
Yeah. We just have about a minute left, so let me ask you this. Do you think we're on the right track with energy? I mean, do you think we're getting on top of this problem, or are we in danger of losing our grip over it altogether?
I think you have lots of opportunities for more shows on the topic.
Yeah. Right now, I'm afraid we are missing it, and I think there's absolutely what is needed is greater public involvement, and in terms of not an immediate response, but a thought out, reasoned debate.
So you think if the public were better informed, that would be a big help?
Yes, yes. We didn't get to talk more about the nuclear part, but there is a lot more to be said about that also.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll cover this topic again in the future.
Okay.
We're just about out of time, so we're going to have to wrap the show. I'd like to thank my two distinguished guests, Barbara Heydorn and Ripudaman Malhotra from SRI International. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Be sure to visit our website at www.futuretalk.net, and be sure to tune in again next time for Future Talk. This is Marty Wasserman, and we'll see you next time.